Welcome to the Auburn Board of Selectmen meeting, February 10th, 2020. Before I call the meeting to order, per the open meeting law, is there anybody in the audience that is recording this meeting? Seeing none, can we stand and salute the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First on the agenda for tonight is no public comment. And we have a public hearing at 7 o'clock for S&J Pizza. S&L Pizza at 711 Southbridge Street in Auburn. Let's see. So basically, we don't have a hearing. It's just we're going to talk about a change in the hours. And we have a representative here from the pizza shop. So, yes, would you please come up and join us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for coming in.
I noticed on the initial application we filled out July 18th when this thing got started, and we had mistakenly put down Friday and Saturday hours 10 a.m. To 1 a.m. and we had intended to put 2 a.m. And then didn't realize that until we were well into the thing, and then thought we could just notify the officer we were just going to change that. No, you're coming before the board again.
So basically, your interest is to change from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m.
Right. Right. Oh, they absolutely do. Absolutely do. And it is incredible. I do a significant number of Domino's franchises. People forget about the second and third shift workers and the first responders and people working in nursing homes and hospitals and companies that are in fact working with foreign governments and in foreign countries, and you've got time changes. They certainly are. And it is tough to get hot food at 2 o'clock in the morning.
And you have other locations that you are responsible for that are open till 2 o'clock in the morning?
We have most of our locations in the greater Boston area are open to either 3 or 4.
And with no issues, no problems?
Oh, none whatsoever. This comes from the fact that usually we find out if we've got a 1 o'clock closing and we're closing at 1 and now they're cleaning and getting ready for the next day, the phone is still ringing, and you can't service them. And so we think this will take care of things.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Berthew.
So just to clarify, because our notes say that you're changing, Sunday through Thursday?
No, Sunday and Thursday stay closed at midnight.
Okay, and Friday and Saturday,
Close at 2.
you want to change it from
1 to 2.
1 to 2? Okay.
There's precedent in the town, and so we're not asking for something that...
Through the chair, if I may, the initial application was for 11 to 1 a.m. on Friday and Saturday, and this new application is for 10 a.m.
So 10, so
it's not just
so 1 hour on each.
1 hour on each end, yes.
Okay, so
Domino's National requires all Domino's franchises to open by 10:30 in the morning, and so we had to back that up.
So we're talking from instead of 11 in the morning till 1 a.m. in the morning on Friday and Saturday, you're going from 10.
Right, we'll open every morning at 10, but Monday through Friday we'll close at midnight, and Friday and Saturday we'll close at 2 a.m.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mrs. Goodrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would I be safe to assume that the bulk of this operation after midnight would be delivery?
Oh, 95% of every day is delivery.
So it's, you don't have a lot of walk-in traffic?
No.
Okay.
No.
Thanks.
Is there any other comments, questions? Have you got anything else for us?
I'm sorry.
Except for, have you got pizza, right?
After you vote, I have a comment to make.
Yeah, you, okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve the change of the hours of operation as presented.
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion, comment, questions? Being none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much, and good luck.
Thank you, and if I could have 30 seconds to thank you, and through you, every town committee that we've dealt with in this town has been absolutely spectacular. The cooperation, the patience that you've exerted with us, it has been a joy, really, to see this, because
Thank you
this
very
is
much
not
for those comments.
this is not the norm in some communities, but Auburn should be proud of their representatives. So we are very grateful for the help and cooperation that we got. So
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Best of
Good
luck.
luck, and thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Okay. Can I have a motion to move up item 6B?
I'll make that motion, please.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ms. Jacobson?
Through the chair, thank you to the members of the board. First of all, I want to thank you. Last year was the first year that you had suggested voting on my goals before we actually did the annual evaluation, which is great because my contract year starts January 31st of every year, or 30th. So this is helpful to have the goals set because it gives me another couple months to get there. So I did ask to put this on the agenda again this evening to set the goals for the following year, again for January 31st of this year through January 30th of 2021. And these goals are in addition to the standard evaluation form that you give me, and within that, there are also several criteria that have to be met. So as we have done the last, primarily, the board has voted for 3 goals for me each year. Last year, I believe there were 4. I would respectfully request 3 again this year. Except that being said, I would tell you there are a lot of things that are going on this coming year. So up for discussion, there are quite a few projects that we're going to be involved in, whether they're goals or not goals. Working on them. So, through the chair, do you want me to just mention the 3 that I thought would be good goals and then have it for discussion? Or do you want to
Just continue on, and then we
Okay.
can leave it up for discussion.
So, and the reason I chose these goals to bring to your, for your discussion is because they really involve multiple departments. And I think it's important to always have a goal that comes from the board that isn't just in one section, that involves a lot of different employees, because it helps to set the goals for all of us when the goals come from you also. So the first one I would recommend would be the ADA transition plan. We just received a grant to put together an ADA transition plan, and this is going to involve, I can't think of a department that won't be involved. This also involves the school department. And we have to do an evaluation and analysis of every single town building, school building, town park, school park, playground. It's a massive undertaking. The second one I would recommend would be, in light of last week's news, the Mary D. Stone property transfer to Penrose and all the steps that are involved in that. So, and there is an item later on the agenda, so just want to make sure that and we'll get to it, but want to thank the Baker-Polito administration for their support in getting the tax credits to Penrose. Now that Penrose has the tax credits, the plan is to transfer the deed to that property, which actually comes from the board, and we already have a town meeting vote for that. But there will be several other town meeting votes that will be required with regard to easements that we're going to be working on between now and the property transfer. Once the property is sold, we still will be playing a very large role in the redevelopment of this with the developer. because there will be waiting lists, there'll be work with a number of different boards and committees throughout the whole construction. So that would be the second one that I would suggest. And the third one I would suggest, again, following up on the vote that we got from town meeting in January, the Auburn Street reconstruction project. That's a massive undertaking. We are thrilled to get town meeting approval to proceed with the easements and the takings, that technically this board is the authority for that. And with the town meeting vote, we can now proceed. But that involves, we're working with 2 different appraisers. We're working with Mass DOT, the feds, all the property owners. And then there's just a series of things that have to happen. And that project, as you know, is a good couple of years. But this year specifically, we have a lot to get done to get this in the queue and ready to go for maybe a little bit of a construction in the fall, but most likely next spring. So the next year, we have a lot of work to do. So those would be the 3. I'd propose the ADA transition plan, the Mary D. Stone property transfer to Penrose, and next steps that are involved in that. And keeping in mind, this starts moving the Julia Bancroft property also, but I wasn't putting that as a goal because that might take another few months. And the Auburn Street reconstruction project.
I know that we've had some discussion over the past few years with goals, and geez, how much can you measure on? But this office and this town seems to be a nonstop project, and we are always in progress, and there's always something to show for it. And I think that if we get in anything more than the 3, I think that, we'll be putting a lot more on her plate than need be. As we do our evaluation, we are not only looking at what her goals would be for the year, but also what the operation of the town is, and, well, what progress and what development's been made over the course of the year. So we will have the chance to evaluate, so I don't think anything more than 3. And I think these here, they just, following through with, the information that has been presented to us, the stories, the hearings, that type of thing. I think it's time that, I think these 3 are definitely a most important thing, and we can actually measure development and progress on these. So that would be my thought on these, and I will leave it up to board members. Mrs. Goodrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to talk in general terms before addressing the 3 goals. And you actually just said a lot of what I was just going to say. Boards set goals for their town managers to kind of hold them accountable and give them something to work towards. As we see annually in the manager's self-evaluation, there are projects that are ongoing, large projects that, we may be aware of, but the community may not be aware of. I mean, the town manager was in contract negotiations this year. There's always something in the hopper. So I've never felt that that the town manager is one that we need to set specific goals to be sure she's doing her job, because she does that every day and she goes above and beyond. But having said that, I understand that, with our evaluation process, that is, it's half of her evaluation. So I would agree that we do need to set these goals. I think that all 3 of them are excellent goals. If I recall correctly, last year, the ADA transition plan was a priority, but we were waiting to hear on the grant money.
Through the chair, that's correct. It was discussed as a potential goal last year, but we were applying for a grant. We weren't sure if we could get that grant, so we did apply for $65,000 and we got the grant.
Yeah.
And now we're about to embark on this transition plan because of it.
And so, I recall that being a priority for, at least 1, maybe 2 board members last year, so I think that's excellent. The Mary D. Stone property transfer, there's talk out in the community. People are excited about this project, and we want to see the town manager usher this through and spend her time on that, because, people know once we get through the Mary D. Stone project, we'll be working on the JB project, and unless you haven't been paying attention to what's going on in town for the last 3 years, this whole Auburn Street reconstruction, Drury Square revitalization has been a priority, and I know that we have attended several meetings in regards to this, so this also has my full support. So I support all 3 of the recommended goals.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Berthew?
I'll just say I'm totally fine with these three goals as well. I know, we also have the condo or housing project out in West Auburn. I know we have the, still talking about with the police and fire, possible multi-complex, the Julia Bancroft. So you've got we know you're working on more than these three, so I certainly can appreciate that you're assigning these three as this year's goals, but I know you're working on a lot more than that. So I'm more than happy with these three as well.
Mr. Liberty?
I'll just add that, yeah, I am also okay with these three goals. I think they're great. Like Mrs. Goodrich said, we already talked about the ADA compliance one. I only had two questions through the chair, if that's all right. The first one is, do you know what buildings would be prioritized through the ADA grant that we were given?
Every building.
Every
believe it or
building?
not.
Okay.
Yeah, the requirement is that you evaluate every building, every park, every playground, and every school. And then the transition plan will be an analysis of what we could do in the future for enhancing ADA accessibility, both under the law and beyond that. What would make some properties better, not necessarily required by law, but what could we do to improve those properties? And part of that ADA transition plan will likely be a recommendation that we start a disability commission. And so when the ADA plan is done, the next implementation step would be to advertise and appoint a disability commission, and the commission would help oversee the implementation of the ADA plan.
I didn't realize that it would be even involved. I mean, parks, too, is interesting. They would include that. And then my other question was with reference to the Mary D. So you had said that there were town meeting some things that were going to have to be brought to town meeting that would be voted on. Do you think that'll be at the annual town meeting, the majority of them, or?
Yes, through the chair. So this evening, well, let me back up. Last week was the official announcement from the state that the tax credits are being awarded to the project. So we couldn't get everything ready for you for this evening, but we did ask the developer to come in at your next meeting on February 24th. And at that next meeting, we are going to present to you a timeline of all the different steps that have to be done. The plan is to go at the May town meeting and get all the easements. We need to grant an easement. Penrose needs to grant one back to us because we have to maintain access to the fields. We also have to work with the planning board. They'll be going before the planning board shortly. And we will have a full timeline for you on all of this for the 24th.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Being none, then I'll entertain a motion for the goals for the town manager for the year 2020.
I'll make a motion that we accept the three town managers' goals as described by her for the January 31st, 2020 through January 30th, 2021 year.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I can just also, I'm just going to mention a couple of other things that we are going to be working on, and we'll keep you also in the loop on this, then I'll let you go on to your next agenda item. But last week, we also attended an event in New Bedford where we were awarded an MVP, which is a municipal vulnerability grant, and that was a $145,000 project, and just got the contract today signed with Fuss & O'Neill to help work on that. That's a massive undertaking. That's another multi-month process, but we should be getting that finished this year as well. And also, another item that's on your agenda tonight, we have to reapply for our Regional Veterans District designation, so that's another entire project that we've got to work on over the next couple months. The comprehensive permit process for Eastland Partners is coming up for the 320 unit, and the public safety facility, I gave you all the timeline, and that will be an enormous undertaking for all of us over the next 12 months to determine how we want to proceed. So there are some other major things that are going on. I'll keep you apprised on those as well, but I appreciate you voting for these three.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, now, can I have a motion to move up item 5D?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ms. Jacobson?
Through the board, I'm going to turn this to the town clerk, because it really is a town clerk issue. I just will, if Deb Grimo wants to come up, I will say that this has been something that Deb has been working on with our town council for 3 years, for 3 years now, so she can fill you in on this. But under the law, the housing authority vacancy created by when we lost with the passing of Ann Weston is required to be filled by appointment of the Board of Selectmen under Mass General Law. Very similar to the process that you use when you appoint a library Board of Trustee member when there's a vacancy. It's the same chapter, same process. So that being said, I'm going to turn it to Deb to explain what she's looking for this evening.
First of all, 3 years ago, 2017, we were advised not to put housing authority members on the ballot because they were supposed to do new regulations to have a tenant elected by the tenants.
Excuse me, Debbie, can you just move that microphone over so our listening audience may hear it also? Thank you.
Do you want me to repeat that?
No.
Okay.
Continue.
So in 2017, we got the notice from the Department of Community Housing about this new regulations that were supposed to be done that year. It all started, I guess, in 2014. However, they still have not, to this day, done these regulations. We've been going back and forth. Elections had gotten involved also and recommended that we don't put them on the ballot. Auburn Housing Authority is not under our charter. It isn't listed as a board, but we do it as, I don't want to say a favor, but have always included them on our ballot because it's just easier. So since they were going from a 4-elected board down to a 3-elected board, with one being tenant elected, they have not done the regulations to this day. So like I said, we've been going back every year. I've been going back with town council and with the Department of Community Housing, and have talked with Auburn Housing just so that we were all on the same and agreed on it. So I did start the process early this fall, knowing that this was a busy election year, and with the passing and the vacant seat of Ann Weston, I thought this year would be, a good year to get it on, because all of them are up now. So after going back and forth with Bob, he suggested that we put 3 elected seats on, with the board appointing one for Ann's remainder of her term, instead of putting it on the ballot as an elected position. So the one that's coming up this year, Alice Ray, she's going to, she said, she's indicated that she's going to run again. They're all 5-year terms. We have 2 holdovers, one from 2017, one from 2018, so those 2 will be put on for the remainder of their years. So we'll have 5, 3, and a 2-year. And then Ann's will be a 1-year appointment to bring us through for the remainder of her term. And hopefully, the regulations will be done at that point, so that there will be a tenant elected by the tenants of the Housing Authority.
If I may, I understand about the elected positions, and that's one of the votes you're going to be asking for tonight, to get those onto the ballot.
Put those back on the ballot.
Okay. For the appointed, how do you foresee that happening? Will there be people that are apply for it?
Yes, we're gonna list it as an open position, and I believe the Housing Authority is seeing if they know anybody that's interested to refer them, because they know that it is going to be appointed by the Board of Selectmen. So we will put it on our website.
So there
yes.
will be an appointment, there will be a joint meeting of the...
There won't be a joint meeting because they were supposed to let us know within 30 days. I don't know the exact law, but they were supposed to let you know under Chapter 41, Section 10. And under Chapter 11 is what you're going to go. So since they did not notify you and so many days have passed, you can just appoint somebody.
Okay.
They were supposed to give
I just
you
wanted to clarify
within
that.
1 month of the vacancy, and
I just want to clarify that we are going to be voting to put positions on the ballot, but we will also be appointing at some point when we receive an individual that has showed some interest and made an application. Thank you. Is there any other questions? By Mrs. Goodrich?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just a couple things. Regarding the appointed seat, certainly I would want it advertised like it was a seat, for any other board vacancy, not just reach out to the Housing Authority to see if they have
Oh,
somebody.
no, it is. It's going to go on the website
who wants to
as
be
an open,
appointed.
and I did tell them that.
Yeah, and so now, just to be clear, so they're a 5-member board, and so moving forward, technically they're a 5-member board. So with the new regulations, which DHCD has not promulgated the regulations on electing a housing authority tenant seat, it will be 3 ballot seats, 1 governor's appointee, and 1 that will not go on the ballot but will be elected by all tenants of the housing authority?
When they do these regulations.
Right, no, I understand
Yeah,
that.
like
You know,
Bob
and I
said,
think-
if by chance they don't, we'll go year to year as
Yeah.
far as the appointment or
Yeah.
extending whatever.
And I just want to say, I think it's, overall, it's been disappointing that we have had these seats just as holdovers because we are unique to other towns in that we already have residents on the board who are tenants.
Tenants on the
I know
board.
they don't count because it doesn't fall under the Housing Authority, but they already, they have 2 voices on the board, so I look forward to filling these seats.
Thank you, Mrs. Goodrich. Is there anything else? Okay. Ms. Jacobson, have you got anything on this?
I'm all set. I would just echo what the town clerk said. We will, our office can work with the town clerk to make sure that we advertise this, similar to what we did when we had the vacancy on the Board of Trustees of the library. We put it on our website, we put it on social media, we put it on Auburn Cable TV, and we really do a good outreach effort to encourage people to apply.
Great. Okay, well then I'm going to ask for a motion so that the board votes to place holdover seats on the May 19th, 2020 annual town election.
You want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion that we place the holdover seats on the 2019-2020 annual town election ballot.
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion?
There will be 3 seats on the ballot.
It'll be for 3 seats, and I think we probably should...
The 3 seats.
Not just the holdovers, the
3
because
seats.
the Housing Authority hasn't been on the ballot, so.
Right.
So that'll be for 3 seats, so that's on the motion? Okay, any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just make a motion so we're clear that we advertise the seat that the board will be appointing and put it on our agenda to schedule a date of when we want to make this appointment.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now, I'd like to move up one item. Thank you, Mr. Berthew. Item 8A. I'd like to move up item 8A while
So
we have
moved.
our town clerk and president.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Okay, and Mr. Lalibde, please.
So I'll try to be pretty brief with it. You all have in your packets the little update that Mr. Carpenter and I drew up for everyone. This is just going over what we've done so far with the voter turnout committee and just a really brief overview of where Auburn stands in regard to voter turnout relative to some of the neighboring communities around us. So you can see from the chart, so Auburn's in orange here, and the county is in blue, the county average. I just want to point out that the county average really isn't the full county. It's representative of 22 towns. So this is all data that I had collected previously just out of curiosity and for school, actually, to try to see where towns were in Worcester County. So there were 22 towns that I was able to get information from over a 20-year period. The earliest was in 1993. I think the only town that actually had data going back that far was the town of Spencer. So really up until 95, you're only looking at Spencer, and after that, more and more towns started to collect data and have it readily available that we could throw in here. So from it, you can see that Auburn's actually has stayed fairly above the county average with regard to voter turnout, which is pretty impressive. Unfortunately, both Auburn and the county have moved in have consistently moved downwards over the last 20 years. And this is only annual town elections, by the way. This isn't including presidential or state elections. This is strictly looking at annual town elections. So in 2000, Auburn's voter turnout was around 28.89%. And then in 2019, our most recent election, we had the lowest turnout in the 20-year period, which was 9.17%. And that actually dipped below what I have for a county average. So hopefully that's just a little bleep where we dunked below the county. But either way, it seems to be a problem, not just for Auburn, and it's certainly not limited to Auburn, but for the communities around us as well. I don't have any, unfortunately, the state didn't collect this data for any of the other communities. There's no central place to get it that I could find. So when I looked for this information, I went to individual town clerks to get it. Which I think is the only possible way to do it. So I can't really compare the entire state or see what the state's general trend is unless we look at state elections, and those are inherently different anyway. But the second chart on here is just to look at the last year's election. And like I said, this may not be the best reflection of Auburn's voter turnout because it was our lowest year in the last 20 years, or our lowest turnout for the last 20 years. Auburn's indicated in gray. And this blue line that goes across the chart here is the county average for that year. So as you can see, there's wide variation between communities as to what is and what has a high turnout and what has a low turnout. Unsurprisingly, I should start with the town of Spencer was the town that had the highest turnout in any of the years looked at, and they came up to, I think it was 51%. At the very least, they barely broke 50% one year. I believe it was the year 2000. No other town came close to that, but at the same time, on the ballot that year were 3 debt exclusions and a recall for a member of the board. So there was a lot going on, a lot of discussion that probably prompted such high turnout that year. Everyone else was pretty far below that. And again, from the second chart, you can really see the wide variation that exists between the different communities in the county for voter turnout. From here, Mr. Carpenter and I had discussed where we wanted to go after looking at this and seeing that it's not an Auburn problem. It really is a county-wide. For whatever reason, there's a depression in the amount of voter participation in local elections, and that's unfortunate. So one thing that we wanted to do moving forward is send out a type of survey. So we have 2 surveys that we were thinking would be appropriate. One would be for residents in the community to try to get a grasp of maybe why there is a lower than turnout than what we'd want, as well as to get an idea of who is voting. I think we all kind of figure that the problems that you see at the national elections, where you see people my age and under 25 really not showing up in elections, is probably exacerbated at the local level. But we just wanted to throw that out there to see if we could get a response from that on our survey, see who really is voting, and then how they're getting the information, how they know when the election is, and if there's any way that could be improved. If they get the survey and they didn't vote in the last election, we can ask them hopefully why they didn't, and then maybe get an idea as to what the barriers are. Either is it that they just aren't interested, or is it that there was a problem? People are, I don't know, more busy. Were they out of town that day, and are they just not aware that there's early voting or access to absentee ballots. Perhaps that's the issue. So that's what we wanted to get at, and of course I'm not early voting for town elections, but anyway, to see what potential solutions there might be or what the real barriers were for everyone. I will say, though, that one of the questions on this survey for residents is, did you vote in the last election? And I actually had a friend who's a grad student at UMass also, who just wrote his thesis on how surveys can be a little inaccurate when they ask that question, particularly polls. They find that people, it's about a 10% bump in people when they're asked after an election if they voted in it. So whatever the results are, we will have to take them with a grain of salt, that some people may say that they voted when they really didn't. But I still think that the survey may be a good way of getting at what the barriers were for people, or what the reasoning is for not voting. And hopefully that can extend, because it's not just Auburn, like I said, but other communities as well that are having this problem. So hopefully we can learn a little bit more about that. The second survey, and this is the one that really we wanted to come to you tonight for, because this one is a little bit easier to send out. We just wanted to send it via email and really send it with the message, if you have time, because I know this is a busy time for clerks with the elections coming up and everything. So, of course, we don't want to put take a lot of time to fill it out, so hopefully we kept it pretty brief and easy, a couple minutes to fill out. And in fact, we may shorten this even more, and also wanted to get your input on if there's anything that should be added or taken away from it. But this was really to see if there's anything that other communities have tried and has it worked. There may be something that a community's already done. We don't want to try to reinvent the wheel if we don't have to. If some community has found that that they've increased their voter turnout by having some particular form of advertising or any other way of increasing voter turnout, then that's something we'd like to know and see if it's able to pursue. So that's what we wanted to come here tonight for, to really get the board's blessing and approval to go forward with emailing that survey out to town clerks in the area, and ask for input and advice and any questions that you might want to see added or anything you might want to see added. I did speak to Mr. Berthien before he had to leave, and his only recommendation for the survey and for both of them was to add a prefer not to say to all of the questions. That is there on a few of the forms already. But he thought that it should be included on each question. So, and that's a pretty easy fix that we can throw in there pretty quickly, just in case anyone's uncomfortable with answering any of the questions. We can add a prefer not to say button for them. So, that was his only suggestion. So I guess I'll open it up in case anyone has any other suggestions that they want to throw out.
Mrs. Goodrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is for discussion purposes. This isn't, the questioning what you have done. I appreciate what you've done. But first, looking at the town clerk survey. So my thought on roughly how many elected positions are on your local ballot annually. So I know there are communities that have a lot of elected positions, like a lot of elected positions. I think what would be important to know, if we're going to do this, to get the information, some communities have, on all of those elected positions, if you win that seat, you now become available for benefits through the town. Mm-hmm. And it's my understanding that some people run for a seat, so they have, whether it's the health insurance, the dental insurance, they get a small stipend, they're available for benefits. So I would be interested to know, like I said, on these towns that have seats that we don't even consider having here in Auburn, to see if those are benefited. Also, on the town clerk survey, I'm curious as to what your thought process was as to what the significance of whether the town has, the community has a town manager, because I'm not making the connection whether it's a town administrator or a town manager, like what the significance of that, what your thought process was on that. Mm-hmm. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, move
Please.
to the other section. So not that I'm not in favor of doing resident surveys. My concern is, how do we get this out? You know, we have a resident survey, what is your age? If we have 5 different voters at one residence, so we're doing 5 different mailings for them to answer this survey. Who will pay for it? I think we learned recently from the public swimming pool how many surveys we got back, and I know we did, correct me if I'm wrong, did we do a survey on the 61A land? I know we did 2 surveys in the last several years, and the percentage of surveys that we got back, I'm concerned that this is a significant cost. I'm not saying it's not worthy of getting the information, but what the best way to get this information is, because I don't know what it would be. First, before I took any action, I would want to know what the cost is through the chairman to the town manager, and I don't expect that information tonight, to know what the cost of doing a full survey to send out to every voter. And we all know that people are highly unlikely to return it unless there's a self-addressed stamped envelope included, or a simple way to do it. People may be well-intended that they're going to fill in the survey, then it sits on their desk because they've got to get an envelope or they've got to get a stamp, and they probably don't need it now anyway, everybody's already responded. And again, this isn't a slam on your work, these are questions that I have. You know, I think that people vote in local elections for many reasons, and one year they do, one year they don't. So I'm concerned about moving forward with the survey, the cost, who we would send it to, and specifically the town manager question.
Hey, Mr. Goodrich, would you like to make some comment to that?
Sure. So I'll start with the town manager question. So the reason that was thrown in there, and actually I've thought about taking it out now because there's no reason really for it for our studies. That was really just an academic question. I was wondering if there was going to be a correlation. So some of the academic journals that I've read have suggested that municipal governments see a decrease in voter turnout. You can see it doesn't apply to Auburn, actually. When a town switches and adopts a town administrator, because there are fewer questions on the ballot, or they feel that there is, voters feel that less like their vote will impact the community. And so that was just an academic. I wanted to see if there was any correlation there. And you can actually tell that voter turnout was going down before Auburn ever adopted the town manager position, so it wouldn't even apply to us. Not that I would ever suggest ending that anyway and getting rid of our town manager, but that was just...
Thank you.
Even if it would increase, it was just an academic question. So I was actually thinking of getting rid of that anyway, but that was why it was originally added to the survey. As for the residential survey, how to get it out, we've been talking about that a little bit. Again, tonight we were only really looking for blessing to move forward with the town clerk survey because that one's easy. That one's via email, internet. There's no cost to do it. The resident survey, we'll still be moving forward with that slowly and coming back to you. We weren't going to look for final approval tonight and then move forward with something, and we certainly weren't hoping for that. But what we were thinking is that there could be a digital one that we could post to the social media pages and hope to get some responses from residents. And then on top of that, we could have paper ones available at public places such as the library, town hall, and see what responses we get over a 4-week period or so. Not sure how many we'll get, and right now I can't answer how many we'd expect to print out or what the cost would be, but we weren't discussing doing a mailing. I know that would probably be the most efficient way to get a lot of respondents, but unfortunately I think the cost would be too great, like you said. So I think that's what we were looking to do for the resident survey, is just have people, when they're already in a location, fill it out if they see it and are interested in it. But like I said, I think the town clerk response, or the town clerk survey, is really where we'd like to go next with it.
Ms. Grimo, have you any comments?
I mean, if you want to mail them out, it would be really costly, because just sending the census out, and we have close to 12,000 voters, so, like you said, in one household, you could have 5, you could have 10, you could have 2. So depending on who's going to answer that, or who you're going to mail them to.
Jim, I'm sorry, when she's done.
Mrs. Goodrich?
So this has been one of my concerns, and, been talking openly about it, the concern that, we want to be respectful of the town clerk's position, as well as working together to increase voter participation. So I don't know how Ms. Greenwell feels about this specific survey or anything. She's the one that has the relationships with the town clerks, the emails with the town clerks. I would much rather see at this point, if we were to use this survey, say, not telling Ms. Greenwell what to put in her email, but to say, I have been working closely with the Board of Selectmen to, over concerns of voter participation, and they have asked me to distribute this. I would rather keep it under the purview of the town clerk with elections, just my personal preference. But acknowledge that she's been working with the Board of Selectmen and under discussions about concern for voter turnout.
More comments? I think from what we have here tonight, I think we've still got some questions. I think that the subcommittee, if they wish to continue to meet again, and then we can bring it to a full board with more comments and see where we go with it. But at least we've broken ground on this, and we'll see where we go with it. Thank you. So this will be something that probably table, and then we can bring back at our February 24th meeting. Is it February 24th? Then I'll just entertain a motion to table that until the 24th.
Mr. Chair, if I
Yes,
can just add
please.
to follow up on a comment Mrs. Goodrich made and the town clerk made. First of all, I want to thank you, because surveys are always difficult to distribute. So we're both talking about different surveys we've done. I just quickly did an analysis, but when we did our swimming pool survey, which we actually sent out 2 surveys, the first one had about 940 recipients. If you figure we have a town of 16,500, and if you figure at a minimum 20% are under 18, so anyone over 18 is eligible, so you're talking about 13,000 people that could have taken it, and 900 took the survey, and that was about a 7% turnout. The high average for any kind of survey instrument in a community is generally thought of as being about 10%. That's generally what you get back. We did the master plan survey recently, and that was, we put a lot of time and effort into that. I think if this does go forward, a couple of questions that I would have also would be, what survey mechanism would you be using? If you are doing it both online and hard copy, which we've done also, who's actually tallying all the results, who's putting everything into the system? Because even if you get the hard copy, somebody actually has to input it into the electronic version of it. And then, again, how do you reach out to the voters of the community? How do you get to them? We've looked at putting things in our tax envelopes before, and there is a cost to that depending on the size of what you put in, the weight of what you put in, so that could also be a very expensive,
And on the
$7,000.
census, the dates are on each year's census. The date of the town election for that year is on the census, so they are getting that also. The signs, I get them on the fire station sign, and then have DPW with their sign and have it rotated around town, just because, someone might go up Route 12, or they may decide to go Route 20, or they may decide to go North Oxford Street. There's many ways to get around town and avoid certain streets. So I drive Kenny Fairbanks nuts with moving this sign daily
We also
for about
have-
2 weeks.
Chairman, I just want to remind the town clerk, we also have the availability now, thank you to Chief Coleman, of the availability of the electronic signs at most, I believe we have 6 at the businesses, so I would encourage use of those as
Right, and
well.
who's going to ask those, I don't even know what businesses they are, but who's going to ask the businesses if they'll put the election information
But
on
they've
there?
already
That's
agreed to.
Election stuff? I know they agreed
on
to
an
emergency stuff.
Right, I'm not sure.
I don't know that an election falls under the...
I'm not sure. I'll look into that. It's a good point.
Yeah, because I wouldn't want to be asking something that they're going to...
But, so I think, all I was trying to say is I think the mechanism for the survey becomes important, and who's collecting the data and who's inputting the data. We found that quite a few people, it doesn't matter how often you give it to them and you hand it out to them, they're just not responding. And then, unfortunately, there are those that will respond multiple times. Vote early and often, right? And that's another issue with, surveys aren't exact. It's just not an exact science. So, and I'm happy to give you some information if, helpful on what ones that we use. I believe the last one we did was SurveyMonkey, and it was a good tool to use. But the average that you can expect at best is probably about a 10%.
That makes sense that we wouldn't get a high turnout. I think we were thinking, we take the results with a grain of salt with whatever we get, see if there was anything that came along, not take what it was said as fact. I mean, that's why I brought up that, we saw a 10% blip in who said that they voted in an election and really didn't. When you look at the voter rolls, that was a project that a friend had done. So I think, you can't take a survey for fact, and I would agree with that. As for the form, so this was made using Google Forms, which is something that I've used before in surveys. We can look into any other kinds of things to use. This one is pretty simple, pretty easy to use. For the digital copies that are done, the results are sent to whoever owns the survey directly their email, so they can log in and see the results whenever. As for inputting from paper copies, I think that would be on us as the committee that created it to put in and be responsible for making sure that everything is put in accurately. So that's,
Okay, well, there was some discussion here, so as I had mentioned earlier, to see if we could table this until the 24th meeting and bring back some more information, and just we'll continue the process.
Sure. I'll make a motion to table it until February 24th?
Yes.
24th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. And thank you, Debbie, for coming in tonight and staying with us. Okay. The next thing we have here is under item 5, item 5B, the annual town meeting, May 5th, 2020. I don't know where the time is going.
I know,
This is
right?
absolutely crazy. But anyway, the first we're going to have to look at is open the warrant for the May 5th, 2020 annual town meeting. Ms. Jacobson.
Through the chair, we looked at the calendar and backed everything up for when we have to mail the warrant, and we do like to give a couple of extra days, not just what's required under our bylaws. And we also felt it would be appropriate to open the warrant for this period of time. So if we vote to open the warrant this evening, we thought you could leave it open until Monday, March 2nd. That gives people about 3 weeks to put items on. I think that's plenty of time. Everybody knows the annual town meeting is always the first Tuesday in May, so the boards and commissions, we do notify them. Sharon lets everybody know when the warrant's open and closed, but they're all aware that this takes place annually and they know what the dates are. So I think 3 weeks is more than enough time to get items to us.
So what we have in front of us to open the warrant tonight, February 10th, 2020, for the annual town meeting on May 5th.
I'll make a motion to open the warrant for the May 5th, 2020 annual town meeting.
Second.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Being none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. And vote to close the May 5th, 2020 annual town meeting warrant.
I'll make a
And-
I'm sorry,
Yes,
go ahead.
please.
Make a motion to close the May 5th, 2020 annual town meeting warrant on Monday, March 2nd, 2020 at 7 p.m.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Being none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Okay, we have a drain layers license application here in front of us from Little Diggers Construction in Auburn, and they've been with us for several years. It's actually been licensed within the previous 5 years, and they're not required to be here. We have our paperwork in front of us, the applications, and we also have from Joanna Paquin, the sewer superintendent, recommending a application be approved. Mrs. Goodrich.
I'll make a motion that we approve the license, provided that all applicable requirements of the state and town and any of its departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all the conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Being none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Oh,
No, I have a question after that.
okay. Mrs. Goodrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've just noticed on a couple of the applications recently, and I'm hoping that they're in easy-to-correct form, but when we just have the signature of the applicant, if there could also be a line for the printed name, because we don't know who the applicant is. A lot of the times you can't make it out, so most applications have a line that says the printed name and then the signature. Even, I believe that's Joanna Paquin, approval of the sewer superintendent, but even still, I prefer to know who's signing off on these. So if we could, through the chairman to the town manager, just request that we look at this application to include something that...
I think that's a great point, and Ms. Jacobson, is that something that we can...
It should be fine. It might require a vote of the sewer commission. I'm not sure, but either way, that's a very simple response. It makes sense. It is hard to see what some of these signatures. I just noticed that as we were talking earlier on the pizza license.
Yes, that's
I
right,
looked at it
yeah.
3 times to figure out what the signature,
Okay, I
who the
think
person was.
probably what we
so-
should do, we'll make a motion to get this done so that they know that it's not...
Make a motion to look at all
Yes,
applications.
yeah, I think
To
it
have
should be all.
an added line, if it's not already there, that says printed name and
Right.
signature. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. That was a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? I think it's a great idea. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now we have gift acceptances from the Fire Rescue, from Bernard J. Melican for $300 to the Auburn Fire Department gift account.
Motion to accept with gratitude.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. And that's the only one we have for tonight. We have no proclamations or recognitions for tonight. And next we have, under the town manager items, it's item 6A, a report on the donations to and expenditures from the gift accounts for the police department and the fire department for fiscal year 18 and fiscal year 19. Ms. Jacobson.
Through the chair, you have a report in your packet. I believe the board voted at its last meeting for this specific memo or data on donations that were made to the gift accounts for both police and fire, and expenditures made out of those accounts specific to these 2 fiscal years, 18 and 19. We're still in 20, that's why you chosen 18 and 19.
Well, if I may ask you, would you kind of go over some of the things that they have purchased?
Sure, so I know that the board asked for just a summary. So
Yes.
each chief has provided, so I'm happy to go over it. So from the police chief, in 2018, there were 0 purchases. In 2019, they purchased a drone in the amount of $3,845, and made a purchase for the installation of 2 blue display lights for the exterior of the main entrance to the police station at a cost of $1,920. During that same period, the police department received $325 in donations for those 2 fiscal years. And the second page is the fire department. The status is in fiscal 218, there were 11 purchases from the gift account. Bottled water for fire apparatus, $71.25. Helmet shield, $224. T-shirts for the participants in the Youth Leadership Academy, $238.06. Flowers and mulch for the firefighters memorial, $34.92. Registration for members to attend a District 7 safety seminar, $175. A management class for the administrative assistant to attend, that was $65. Department T-shirts that are $458. And these are different than the standard uniforms. That's why it was a different. The service renewal for the electronic sign for $520. The Heart Safe Community roadway signs, $152. An EMT reimbursement, $136. And pink cancer T-shirts, $856. In 2019, there were 5 purchases from the gift account. Again, this is fiscal year. Registration for 17 members to extend an extrication class. That was $935. T-shirts for, again, participants for the Youth Leadership Academy, $276.12. Smoke detectors, $89.61. A drone, $1,131.59. And Christmas wreaths for the apparatus. As you know, they primarily decorate the fire trucks for the Santa, for the Santa tour. And during that same period, the fire department, those 2 fiscal years, they received $4,526.32 in donations.
Well, thank you very much for that, Ms. Jacobson. It was just a question I had because we do receive a lot of these donations in from individuals, from groups, for the different ones. We understand that, there's many come in for, say, for the Pappas concert series. But when we get to the police and fire, there's nothing been said one way or another what is there. And it was just out of curiosity and just to find out exactly so the public would know where their donations are going. And I think that, the lists are great, and I think it and they benefit the service members of the fire and police departments. And I thank you very much for that.
Nope, my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay.
And I also want to thank the chiefs.
Oh.
I say my pleasure, but their pleasure. Thanks to both of them.
The next we have is item 8C. It's request the Board of Selectmen to vote on approve the intermunicipal agreement between the towns of Auburn, Charlton, Oxford, and Southbridge to continue the South Central Massachusetts Veterans Service District. Ms. Jacobson.
Thank you. Through the chair, in your packet, I gave a pretty detailed explanation of what we're doing this for tonight, so I'll just try to summarize it, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. But back in 2015, Auburn first joined the district, along with Oxford. A district had already been established that was Charlton and Southbridge. And the reason we joined the district was because of the state law, specifically under Chapter 115, that states that communities with a population of 12,000 and above are required to have a full-time veterans agent. Even given our caseload at the time, a full-time veterans agent is very difficult to justify as far as with that type of a caseload. That being said, the town of Auburn and Oxford was, because under the law, if you already had a veterans district agent, a veterans agent in the position, you didn't have to come into compliance with the full-time because that person was already there when that law was promulgated. That being said, we anticipated down the road that we were going to have to get a new veterans agent, and as it turns out, we have had to do that. So at the time, to be proactive, and I also believe it provides better services to the veterans of all of our communities to enter into a district. And as it turns out, Auburn has had a veterans agent in the past that had some health issues and was absent quite a bit, and we had coverage through the district so that nobody did not get their benefits. Everything continued because we were able to have coverage. So those under the law, your designation for a district lasts 2 years, and then you're allowed 1 2-year extension. So we got both. So we got the 2-year designation, then in 2017, we got the 1-year extension. Then in January of this year, I got a letter that we have until April to reapply. So we have to reapply again. And under the law, not under Chapter 115, but under Mass General Law, and I'm sorry I don't have that reference, but I will get it, Chapter 40, Section 4A, the chief executive officer of a city or town who's allowed to execute a contract, which would be the town manager in Auburn, if you're doing that with more than one community, so in other words, it's an intermunicipal agreement, meaning there's 2+ communities, the Board of Selectmen in each town has to approve of the agreement. So the board had voted previously for me to sign the agreement, and now I'm asking the board to do so again. It will enable us to continue to operate as we have been. I would then, I was just voted to be chair of the district board of directors, so I'm going to be responsible for putting the application together to the state for this district and making sure that, you know, we have our regular meetings, we post our meetings. And so that's the IMA. The IMA stands for Intermunicipal Agreement. Under the Chapter 115, they look at the aggregate population. So the numbers that I showed you here in the IMA are estimated. Obviously, the 2010 census, which is the last full census that was done, our numbers are actually a little bit lower than that. They're 59,000. But even if you take the current estimates, which are, again, are just estimates, we still come under that threshold of 61,000. So under that, we need 1 full-time director. We need the equivalent of 1 full-time agent, which in our case, we have 2 agents, so the state has authorized that to be the equivalent. And you need 1 full-time clerk, which is provided by the town of Charlton. The clerk provides assistance to Charlton and Southbridge. Each, Auburn and Oxford, each have our own clerks that provide the backup and do the a lot of the administrative work. So the town of Southbridge, I believe they're voting this evening as well. They have to restructure their position because the current district director is retiring. And that current district director is an employee of the town of Southbridge and also wears multiple hats and has other positions in Southbridge. The director position, it is a full-time director, but he also does other things. So the position is being restructured in Southbridge to just be a Veterans District Director. Under that scenario, Southbridge, if it was let's say it was a $64,000 job, that Southbridge would pick up $32,000. Charlton picks up $16,000 because they're the ones that primarily use this director as their agent as well as the director for the whole district. And because we're required to have this, Auburn and Oxford would each pay $8,000 in addition to our current budget that we have for our part-time veterans agent. And I would say that our current veterans agent's doing a tremendous job. He's actually almost doubled the amount of clients, cases that he has, which means more veterans are getting more benefits that they're eligible for, so that's a good thing. It also means that the town will be paying more in benefits because we're reimbursed from the state for 75%, so the other 25% is the town. So it's definitely a cost to the town, but it's the cost that we should be doing. It's to make sure that our veterans have what they're eligible for and what they deserve to get. So tonight's vote would be for the IMA, and in the IMA, I just wanted to show you all how the financial structure worked, and there's also a nice chart in here that the new town administrator from Charlton prepared for us that shows kind of how this works with the board of directors being made up of the town managers and town administrators of each town. The Veterans Services Director being an employee of the town of Southbridge and primarily servicing Southbridge and Charlton. Each Auburn and Oxford having our own veterans agent servicing our communities, but then overall, everybody can provide backup to one another when needed. Does
Great.
that explain it? I know it's
No,
complicated.
there's a lot to it, but you know what, the veterans, you know, if eligible, should get the benefits for their service and their time and their sacrifices. And I thank you very much for keeping this together and, well, complying with state law. But this is going to be a great thing, I think, and we move forward with it. So I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the intermunicipal agreement between the towns of Auburn, Charlton, Oxford, and Southbridge to continue the South Central Massachusetts Veterans Services District.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. We move on to update on the Penrose tax profits for Mary D. Stone School.
Yes, this is exciting news, and as you've seen, it's also been in the paper, and I did notify the board by email about this as well, but just wanted the public to know, if they haven't heard it yet, that the Mary D. Stone School developer, who is Penrose Properties, was last week, it was announced that they've been awarded their low-income housing tax credits, which are both state and federal tax credits that pass through the Department of Housing and Community Development at the state level. And because they got those tax credits, in addition to the historic tax credits that they've received, which you as a board have supported and been great, as well as the Historic Commission, the Planning Board, we had so many boards and commissions in town that wrote letters of support, including all of our legislative delegation, the Council on Aging, the Fire Chief, the Police Chief, the Elder Services Director, and all of those tax credits together make it possible for this project to now proceed. So as we talked about earlier, over the next 6 to 8 months, it's going to be very busy, making sure that we get that property transferred over to Penrose, and their plan is to start construction in July. We're coming before you on the 24th with the representatives from Penrose, who are going to just walk you through the plans. You can see some of the new drawings. They're exciting because when they went for the historic tax credits, there were a couple of tweaks that were made that made the buildings actually even more attractive. They already were, but now I think the plan is beautiful. And we're excited that this project is going to proceed. So we will come to you with a timeline, so you'll see how everything follows. The other good news is that at the same time they got their tax credits, they were invited by DHCD to put in an application for Julia Bancroft for this current round. And similar to Mary D., we anticipate it would be 2, if not maybe the 3rd, hopefully the 3rd round of funding, because the project would never get funded on the first round. So now that the Mary D. is done and through the pipeline, we're allowed to put another application in.
Great.
So that will be the next one that we're working on, and Penrose is really hoping that the projects will be about a year apart. So Julia Bancroft would probably close approximately a year from now if the funding comes through from the state at the same timeline that Mary D. did. There's always, a possibility it's a little longer, but we're really excited about it.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Next, we have a reminder on the 2020 Citizens Leadership Academy. Ms. Jacobson.
Through the chair, there is a flyer in your packets. We have been promoting this through our website, Auburn Cable TV, social media, as well as through Dr. Brunel and her notification to her some 4,000 parent family list that she sends it out, and last year we actually got quite a few applicants when she did send that out. So we're just really trying to encourage people to participate in this. This would be the 3rd one that we've run, and it's exciting. We have an opportunity to meet a lot of residents that we wouldn't normally meet, and these residents have an opportunity to learn about us and get to meet us. And the nice thing is, in both the first class and the second class, we had graduates who then signed up to be on boards and commissions and get more involved in the town. And that's the whole intent, is to try to increase the applicants. And I think I mentioned, but at this point, we have more applicants for board and commission seats than we actually have seats. So I hope to think that this is working.
Yeah, I would say definitely it's definitely beneficial to the town, because it's always, you go to any town and they're always members, boards, commissions, committees, and even volunteers. It's just, and again, you can't say enough. Thank you to all of the ones that have been participating in the Auburn programs. It's, you make it happen, and we do well with it. Is there any other questions? Yes, Mr. LaLiberty.
I just wanted to add a comment. I mean, we were just talking about, and the subcommittee that I'm on is on voter turnout and voter participation, and that's not the only way that people participate in municipal government, and it's great to hear that, you know, this is working. It's getting people involved on the boards and commissions, so that's awesome.
Yeah, it's great, thank you. What we noticed in the last class especially too was a really broad range of ages that participated, which was really nice. We had some people who were new to town, we had some younger voters, and we had some senior citizens as well. So it was nice to get a cross-section of the whole population in town representing all the demographics that participated. And I know on this board, Mrs. Goodrich participated in the first year, and last year, Mr. Carpenter participated. So, and we had 16 in each group, I believe. 16. So it's worked out great. The employees enjoy it too because it gives them an opportunity to explain what they do, how things work, what the operations are. We give tours of a lot of our different facilities, so I think we have found that the people who participate are really surprised at, first of all, everything that gets done by each department. It is impressive when you see them in action and what they're actually doing. And then the tours are always interesting because it's good for them to know where their taxpayer dollars go and what kinds of programs and services they're getting as taxpayers here and how it all functions.
Okay. Thank you. Next, Ms. Jacobson, I'm going to call on you again, but it's the fiscal year 21 budget schedule, and the May 5th, 2020 annual meeting is coming up, and the time is flying.
It is. So we just wanted to let you know, Ed Kazanovich, the Assistant Town Manager and CFO, and I are finishing up the budget for FY21. We should be getting it to you probably within a week or so. Just wanted to give you the opportunity to see it, and it will probably then be on the February 24th agenda, but we're going to try to get it to you earlier than that. We have one or two more budget meetings. We're just about there. We have to go back and revisit a couple of them and start inputting everything into the system. So it is a lengthy process. We've been working on it since the end of December, so we should be ready shortly. It's a short time frame, but we'll make it. We'll make the deadlines under the bylaws for getting it to you, and then, as you know, the board then transfers it to the Finance Committee, and then they start their work.
Okay. Well, I guess just as a comment, it's coming up quickly. I know you're still in the process of, budget meetings with the different departments, but it'd be interesting to see how well you feel that the town is doing when we get to that point where we're ready to send from the board here to the Finance Committee and see what the outlook is in general. Thank you. Anybody have anything else on that? All right. Well, the next we have is no public comments tonight, and has any board members got anything tonight? Ms. Jacobson, have you got anything else tonight?
The only thing I want to mention, because I did, it wasn't on the agenda, but I did go to an announcement last week. I mentioned it quickly earlier, but the MVP program, we did get a grant for $145,000 to analyze and come up with some strategies for protecting our drinking water. So we'll be working with the Auburn Water District, as well as looking at green bridge design for our culverts. Specifically, we're going to be taking a look at Sword Street, and just signed the contract today with Fuss & O'Neill, who will be the consultant that will be working on that with us. The intent is to have the plan and the report and all of this analysis done by June 30th. So we're excited about it. It's a great grant to receive. It's a really good program that the state started, and we are grateful that we were selected. I believe there were maybe 10 communities that were represented at the meeting last week at the press event in New Bedford, and I think maybe 6 or 7 of them are actually doing the implementation. Some of them are actually putting their MVP grant together. And I wanted to mention it because one of my goals for last year that you all set for me was to apply for the MVP designation. So we did get that done. we applied for, and as a result, we were eligible for that round of funding that we just had. So we got the application in, got approved, and made it into the round and actually got funded. So it was great. So
We
thank
move
you for
on.
your support.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Okay, we have some minutes in front of us for January 13th, 2020, and January 27th, 2020. Any errors, omissions, corrections, questions? Being none, I'll accept them as presented. And on that note,
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you and good night.
Run, draw. Good night.